Before, one of the funders asked us, what's their name, what's their date of birth, what's their postcode, have they self-harmed? And they insisted we ask that at the first meeting. I phoned them up and said, I'm not asking that question. I'll never see them again. They don't know who I am yet. Literally, first time they meet, I'm asking them that question. That's wrong.
This is the Disconnected Bodies podcast, hosted by Pablo Colella. Deep dives for the curious creative.
Robin Lockhart is a renowned expert in disrupting narratives and cultivating connection and self-recognition of strength. His expertise in prompting rapid shifts in perspective have been honed during 20 years working with youth and communities in challenging circumstances. Amongst his international awards, he was recognised as one of the BBC 100 Londoners and awarded both the European and Global Youth Worker of the Year by the Commonwealth Secretariat, and now serves as the Commonwealth Youth Work Ambassador.
A lot of my work is just through conversations. The phrase that we use at Catalyst in Communities is powerful, meaningful, potentially transformational conversations. And they could go anywhere. So it's often when people come, and sadly, a lot of the time in this country, particularly in England, youth and community work is kind of through a lens of a deficit. So people will be coming to a project because of an identified problem. Even to get the funding, you have to identify what's wrong with people, which is a horrific starting point. So often people will come and they'll have a presenting problem, whether they're, they've done some offending, or I don't know, they're addicted, or they're homeless, or they've got some sort of diagnosis. What my conversational approach, which I call the art of perception, is that recognizing from the beginning that the thing that they present with is not the problem. It's usually a symptom of another problem. So these conversations can dig and sort of take turns and go to places that you don't quite imagine at the beginning of the conversation. And yeah, one of these young people said, that's like free range thinking, free range talking. And I quite liked it. So yeah, I've nicked that phrase.
It sounds good. Sums you up really well, knowing you.
Scatty mind, yeah.
I wouldn't call you scatty mind at all. Right, so let me go through a couple of the your achievements. Okay, so you've got...
This is where I blush.
Right.
My head grows to beyond the screen.
There's justification for it. So in 2022, named one of BBC's 100 Londoners.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was that a voting, or was it just the work you were doing just be...
I don't really know, to be honest. It was during their centenary year, which is why they selected 100 of us. My nephew was selected as well, who was like 10 or something back then.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's an amazing kid. It was a beautiful thing. I got interviewed several times on BBC about that, and I think that they made a documentary about one of my projects back in 2019, so they were aware of who I am and what I do. It was wonderful. We went up to the BBC and met all the 99 others.
Yeah.
It was a good experience, and I don't really know how it happened, to be honest. I think somebody nominated me.
Right.
But
I suppose when you do quite high profile projects, and
yeah,
you know a lot of people, so I think
the rest of some of the stuff people were doing was phenomenal. There was the Grenfell football project there, and people doing just amazing work. And that's generally the case. When you bring people together, you find out, you scratch beneath the surface and you find out they're doing something amazing.
Yeah. And then you're Global Youth Worker of the Year by the Commonwealth.
Yeah, that was a while back as well, 2016 and 17. Again, don't know who nominated me. And to be honest, I had some trepidation around that. I got told I'd been nominated and didn't really know if I wanted to be associated with the Commonwealth.
Right.
There's some horror in their past. We know what the Commonwealth was. And I actually went to see my mum, my coach, my mentor, and had a conversation with her about it. And I said, there's certain people in my life who will probably stop talking to me if I get associated with the British Empire, all of that horror. And what she said to me was, I know how you work with young people. You work with a lot of young people who have been through horrific pasts. And my approach with that is to remind them that no matter what you've been through, no matter how terrible it was, you can't change what happened, but you can change how you relate to what happened. And that is what I've been doing with the Commonwealth since 2016 and 17, is talking to them about what can they be rather than what they were. We know what they were. We know the horrors of the empire. But the Commonwealth is this beautiful group of 56 nations. It's a true slice of the planet. From places like Canada and Australia, New Zealand, and us here, to tiny little Pacific islands, to landlocked mountain estates and deserts, everything. Everything is present in the Commonwealth. It's a third of the world's population.
Right.
And of that population, I think nearly 1.7 billion are young people.
Wow.
So doing what I do,
Yeah.
it kind of made sense to get involved. And I'll never forget meeting the guy who was the African youth worker. The first one I was nominated for was European Youth Worker of the Year.
Okay.
The guy who won, good friend of mine, Eric, that you've also
Right.
met.
Wow, I didn't. Oh, of course. No,
Yeah,
you
that's
said
how
that,
we
of
met.
course, yeah.
So Eric's in Kenya. He runs youth work in a place called Mathare, which is a slum that he grew up in. I think there's 500,000 people there. No running water officially, no electricity officially. And he came up to me and said, well, I'm the African Youth Worker of the Year. Congratulations on being the European one. And he went, how many European nations are in the Commonwealth? So it's the UK, Cyprus and Malta.
Right.
That's it. He laughed in my face and said, I beat Nigeria and South Africa and Zambia and Kenya. There's billions of people.
Yeah.
But at the end of that day, I also was the winner of the global one. So I got to
Right.
laugh in his face too.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what sealed our friendship.
Yeah, I was going to say, it hasn't ruined the friendship. You're still together.
Yeah, yeah. And we're doing some work together, as you know.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
doing a beautiful project over there called Kicking It for Her, which
Right.
is using football as a mechanism to bring young people together to then have conversations about creativity and reproductive health and all sorts of stuff. It's based on bringing girls into the game,
Right.
but not exclusively female players. He's doing it with all genders over there.
Yeah. Interesting guy.
Yeah.
I've not met him.
You will.
But briefly
You
spoke
will.
to him on the phone. But so how you get these accolades? Do they help with your access to new opportunities?
Wow, such a
Did
good
it
question.
push you forward?
Nobody goes into this sort of work to get awards.
Mm.
You go into this sort of work to make a difference. I went into this sort of work to make a difference, do what I can to improve some lives. But I think it does mean something. It's sort of a mark of approval or reassuring perhaps for some funders or partners. And it is also recognition that the work I've been doing and my team have been doing for we're in our 15th year now as Catalyst, is of a certain level. You know, we're quite a small organisation, but we've done some really, really meaty and big projects.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of the work that we've done. And I'm very proud of the accolades. And hopefully one day there'll be some more.
Oh, I'm sure. Let's talk about Catalyst for Communities whilst you bring it up.
Right.
So, because the approach you take is slightly different, as far as I understand it. So, so you have this coaching mindset,
Yeah.
rather than what you feel is like traditional community work,
Yeah.
I guess you could call it.
Yeah, I took when I left music. So I ended up with a recording studio, some shares in a recording studio. It wasn't my studio, working with some partners in Hackney, and we started to work with young people. We'd let them come and use the space, recording. We'd also give people work experience placements and stuff. And after doing that for a number of years, we started to be asked to come into colleges, schools, and work with them through creativity, through art, and mainly through music. Often we'd set up a record label. So we'd go to a college and say, right, this is now a record label. You don't just need, singers and rappers and musicians. You need songwriters and dancers and videographers and photographers and someone to do the books and the accounts and someone to do the marketing. So it's a nice project to bring everybody together. While I was doing that work, I kind of had a realization that I loved working with communities. Music and arts was always going to be part of my work. But I took a distance learning degree in informal and community education. And as part of that, I had to get myself a job in that setting. So I got a job with a charity and started working with young people in schools and in youth clubs and stuff, and never looked back, really. I worked for various different charities, never worked for a local authority, but worked for some charities. And then 15 years ago, realized that there was some freedom in setting up my own non-profit. So Catalyst in Communities was born. I set it up with a guy called Dr. Pascoe all those years ago. He was a doctor of criminology. So it's very helpful to have people involved with different skill sets. And we've remained quite agile, I think is probably a good word to use. We didn't want to become a big lumbering charity with, offices full of people waiting for contracts, waiting for jobs. A lot of our work is project-led. So we'll get a grant to do a specific project. If that project is around, I don't know, media, we'll put a team together to deliver that project. So we work a lot with freelancers, and the sort of the gig economy and creative businesses is the way that most people get in. We do a lot of projects where young people come through the work, do some learning. So we had a project called youmeus.tv, which was funded by London's mayor. It's not funded anymore. May well be coming back soon, where young people learnt to create, curate, and then commercialize their content. So they were creating stuff for social media. But through that work, we found some great, videographers and sound editors, and now they're part of our freelance pool. So we quite often then give them paid work once they've come through one of the projects. And it always leads to real discovery. You bring people together around a shared purpose, around a goal, and then you start to communicate, and you always find out that, people might come in saying that they want to make the tea, and could they just take some photos? And then you suddenly describe that they're a fantastic, you find they can describe things in fantastic ways, or maybe you give them the questions that you've put together for a podcast or for an interview, and they'll reword them in a much better way.
Right.
Or, somebody might come in saying that they want to help clean the studio, and then you find out they're a fantastic photographer. Mm-hmm. Once you engage with people, once you have conversations that push a little bit, prod a little bit, sometimes a little bit uncomfortable perhaps, that's what coaching is. Rather than telling people what they're capable of or advising them, you're enabling them to come to their own conclusions. So in the space that we work in, we're often asked to work with, as I said before, this kind of deficit lens. To get the grant, we have to identify what is wrong with the participants, which is a horrific starting point. The rest of the world, the rest of the Commonwealth don't do that. They follow something called positive youth development and appreciative inquiry, which is kind of what we do. So we recognize young people may have a challenge, they may have been through something, they might still be going through something, but that's not who they are. And we connect with them on a level where I'm 100% sure every time that they are the solution to that challenge. It's not that they are at a point of deficit, it's that they've been through, something's happened or is happening. They don't like it. We don't like it. Their family don't like it. So reminding them of the problem, I don't think helps. So we'll find out, what are you into? And usually there's a creative element. I just believe that creativity is a deeply human need. It's what sets us apart from the rest of the sort of the natural world. Is we can communicate with words, and I know some other creatures kind of communicate with sound, but we create things. We talk, we sit together, we have conversations that lead to something better, something being generated. So that generative approach, if somebody comes along and they've been identified, I don't know, as being somebody who's committed some criminal offences, reminding them of that, calling them a young offender, which is what they generally get called. What if they believe us? If we call them, as society, we say, you're a young offender, and they go, yeah, I'm a young offender, they're more likely to continue offending. That becomes their identity. So we would prefer to say, look, we know what you've done. We've read your referral sheet. That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about what you'd like to do with your life. So where do you see yourself in 10 years, 15 years? What do you want to achieve before you die? Your coaching is all around the sort of asking the right question at the right time to prod and provoke the right kind of learning. When people have the learning for themselves, rather than being told by a teacher or a mentor or a counselor or a therapist, try doing this, that's kind of doing work to them. We prefer to work with people and let them come to their own conclusions. We're often asked, can you fix year 9? We've got some problems in year 9, or could you fix these 15 young people? Or we've done lots of work with homeless people and addicts and people in prisons and victims of crime, all sorts of different groupings. If you label them before you've worked with them, I think you prevent any of the growth, any of the progress, any of the healing, any of the transformation. So I don't label people by their behavior. We're not our behavior. Behavior is communication. All of it is communication. And we're not born knowing how to behave. We learn how to behave. And sometimes people learn things that are not acceptable. Sometimes people learn behavior that is risky for themselves or risky for others. Just telling them to stop, particularly young people, often means that they dig their heels in. They might turn up for a project if they're mandated to be there. They have to be there because the youth offending order has told them they must be there. They'll turn up. But just being in the room is not enough. So we often say, look, attendance is not mandatory. But once you're here, participation is mandatory. I want you to put everything to the side and sort of peel away the layers and be the real you. And asking questions is an invitation. We'll often say, you don't have to answer my question. I'd quite often prefer that you consider it deeply and say, I'd prefer not to answer that, but you've considered it deeply, than just give me some off-the-cuff answer. There's a lovely little quick story that's just popped into my head. We did a group, this was with young offenders in East London, many years ago this was. I'd met them all separately to do some one-to-one work, and then we brought them together to do an arts project. It was a music-based project. They'd all answered the same set of questions that was given to us by the funder. So often those questions are, how do you rate your anger on a scale of 0 to 10, which for me is kind of meaningless. I don't really know what that means. I think you could ask them on a Tuesday and they'll say a 7. And if you ask them on a Friday after they've had a row with their mum, they might say a 9. And so what? What does that really mean? So I added a few supplementary questions, one of which was, would you like to be a parent one day? They all said yes. So when I brought them all together, I was the only one in the room who had met everybody. They didn't know each other necessarily. Even the ones who had been labelled as the gang from this area, it became clear they didn't know each other. They lived in the same area. They'd been caught doing something criminal. Therefore, they were labelled as the gang from that postcode. They weren't a gang. They just lived there and had done some crime. So I introduced myself, brought them all together. I said, I'm in a unique position here. I know everybody. And by the end of these sessions, you'll all know each other too. And then I said, all of you have answered the same questions and you've given various answers. But the one question that you all gave the same answer to was that you all want to become parents one day. So 20 minutes later, when they stopped laughing and saying, you're never going to find a woman and you can't get it up and all the stuff that young people do to each other and laugh at each other about, they calmed down a bit. And I said, I've got another question that I'd like to ask you now. And I said that piece about, I don't mind if you answer it or not. I prefer that you really, really consider it deeply before you answer it. And in order to help, I'm going to ask you to shut your eyes for 60 seconds before I ask the question, and then we'll keep our eyes shut for another 60 seconds afterwards. If you want to talk about it afterwards, we can, but I'm not going to force you to. I just want you to really consider it. So some miracle, they all shut their eyes instantly. Sometimes that takes 10 minutes or more. And then I said, ask yourself if you're the kind of man you'd like your daughter to marry. 3 of them burst into tears. Mm-hmm. And then we had this, after the extra minute, we had this beautiful conversation. And one of them just said, I don't want my daughter knowing that men like me exist, let alone settling down with men like me. And I said, there's good news here. You're 14. You're not a man. You've just identified the kind of man you don't want to become. That's a massive thing. You've met me. You've met my team. We're here for you. This project's going to finish. We're not going to finish. You can join our next project. Become that man. You've got plenty of time. You've got people around you that want to help you. You've identified a career path. You want to do music. We can help you. If you give 100%, I'll match you. So he has gone on to do some amazing things. And I'm still hopeful that he'll become the kind of man he really wants to become. Now, if I just told him, you've got to stop your crime, you must change, you're going to kill somebody or you're going to get killed, whether the message gets through, I don't know. We seem to spend a lot of time in this country talking to young people about the stuff we don't want them thinking about or knowing, which to me seems like that's, for me, a definition of insanity. Young people are experts on gangs, guns, knives, drugs, homelessness, unemployment, addiction, self-harming, depression, anxiety. They have assemblies in schools about these things. And then we wonder why they leave thinking about these things. And if you leave thinking about knife crime makes you fearful, you're going to become more likely to pick up a weapon. You're going to become more likely to join a gang if you're afraid enough. Fear is driving a lot of that stuff. So we have conversations with young people about peace, stillness and world peace, but inner peace for ourselves. Yeah. We have conversations about morals. We have conversations about all of these interesting, beautiful topics, communication skills, love even, which is kind of a taboo word. You mustn't talk to young people about love. How do we expect them to adopt behaviors that they're unaware of? If you grow up in an aggressive house, in an aggressive area, where people come to your school and talk about violence and knives and gangs all the time, I think we're kind of advertising the behavior we don't want. And then it leaves people who choose to be in the sort of industry that I'm in to sort of unpick that.
You're listening to the Disconnected Bodies podcast. Just a quick pause to tell you about the work behind the show. At Disconnected Bodies, we support bold projects and bold people who want to create or take part in meaningful, inclusive arts experiences. Our mission is simple: to widen cultural access and democratise the arts. We believe in the power of choice, that everyone should have the chance to choose art and culture as a vital part of their lives, and that's why we've built some of the most empathetic, practical tools in the field, tools that reflect the complexity and diversity of real people's experiences. To learn more, collaborate, or get support for your project, visit disconnectedbodies.co. Now back to the episode where Robin explains measuring impact and success.
It's a huge, huge issue within this sector. We're often asked to evidence the things that we've prevented from happening. How do you evidence something that didn't happen? So, having Dr. Pascoe on board in the early days, he's kind of semi-retired now, was really helpful because he was able to present, statistical data. I remember being asked by one funder, have you reduced their angry tendencies by more than 23%?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, here's a graph that Dr. Pascoe has prepared. What does that mean? What does 23% reduction in anger mean? It's a weird thing. I know we need evidence, we need data, and we need to get better at presenting it. I think the value of what we do is in prevention. Young people seem to be viewed by every government, not just the current government or the previous government, who kind of decimated the youth service. They kind of cancelled it.
really
Almost, some places 99% of youth service was taken away because it costs a lot. On paper, on the spreadsheet, it looks like it's a lot of money. I think in accountancy terms, if you move it from the expenses column into the investment column, then it starts to make sense. But if we don't invest in children and young people while they're children and young, they're going to become very expensive adults. So this thing about evidence is a bit of a red herring sometimes. I remember doing another podcast during lockdown with, I think it was Ministry of Justice, and there was a few prison governors and some senior police officers, and then me and a few other youth workers and various different practitioners on that call. A similar conversation to this about our methodology. And this very senior person from Ministry of Justice said, Robin, look, I like what you're saying. You're very passionate about your work. You believe in it. You've had some success, but where's your evidence? So I said, with all due respect, I've been doing it quite a long time. I've read all the evidence from pupil referral units, from youth offending teams, from the Ministry of Justice, from prisons. All your evidence is showing us that everything that's being done hasn't alleviated the problem. It really hasn't. Things have got worse for young people. So give us a chance. Help us. Monitor us. You do the evaluation. You're the ones asking for the data. We're the experts in the practice. I don't want to become an expert in doing bar graphs and statistical analysis. I want to be an expert in facilitating the processes that I specialize in. Otherwise, I'm going out of my lane. And there are some funders now doing that, that are saying, look, you do the work. We will send somebody from this university to do your evaluation, which I appreciate. There's often just sort of minutiae in it that seem to be the thing. Like the joke that I always tell, this is a true story. It happened many years ago. It was a project that we had funding to do around cultural equality in East London. I was doing it in schools across East London for a number of years. I think it was a 3-year project. It was called Truce. It was training to recognise and understand cultural equality was the package we put together. And the funder sent us the monitoring form. And the very, very first session I did was in a boys' school in Newham. So there was kids with ancestral ties to everywhere on the planet, basically, in that room, beautifully mixed. And at the end of the session, I gave the form out, and they had to, put their first name on there, date of birth, which school they were at, all of that kind of data to give them some demographic data. Then there was the tick box around their ethnicity. And I won't say an argument, but a discussion started in one of the corners, and it was I think it was a boy with Kenyan ancestry sitting next to a boy with Bengali ancestry. And the Kenyan boy was upset. And I said, what's going on, lad? He said, he gets to put Asian Bangladeshi. I get to put Black African or Black British. Why can't I put my country? And then another boy in the corner, who I think was Lithuanian origins, I think he had only just come from Lithuania, said, there's another box. You can tick other and write whatever you like. I said, what have you written? And I put grey.
Okay.
There was a kid in that room who was Malaysian, I think, if I remember rightly, who said, what am I supposed to put? It had Chinese and Chinese other. That's like telling a Scottish person they're English other. So it's a bit of an insult. So anyway, at the end of that session, every single kid wrote grey.
Right.
I collected the forms up. Next week, I went to a different school. I told them this story, and every single kid wrote grey. And I told the story at the next school, and every single kid wrote grey, and I handed all the forms in. Nobody ever approached me and said, Robin, like, all these grey children that you're working with, either they didn't notice or they didn't care,
Right.
or they just thought I was an idiot.
Mm.
I never, ever got asked about it. So what are they doing with
wild.
all this data?
Yeah.
And what difference would it make if, 2% of the population are grey, or 2% of the population are, I don't know, African origin? Okay, lovely. And what?
Yeah. That's it. Where
So
would you go with it?
it is a weird thing. We have to do it, but I think the more we focus on knife crime, the more we advertise knife crime. The more we focus on anxiety, depression, self-harm, we're advertising those problems. If the aim of the funding is to reduce those problems, I think we should be monitoring the positive benefit. And in order to do that, we need to connect, we need to bond, we need to build trust and credibility with the participants. Doing a data-driven interview at the beginning of the process, that drives a wedge between you. So I would prefer it's external. I'd prefer that we focus on the engagement, we focus on building connection, trust and credibility to create the change. And then this anonymous person from X university comes along and meets the same young person and they do the monitoring, because it gets in the way.
Yeah.
It breaks that relationship sometimes. I mean, I think I've told you before, one of the funders asked us, what's their name, what's their date of birth, what's their postcode, have they self-harmed? And they insisted to be asked that at the first meeting.
Yeah.
And I phoned them up and said, I'm not asking that question. I'll never see them again. They don't know who I am yet. Literally, first time they meet, I'm asking them that question. That's wrong.
Yeah.
And it's counterproductive. So I'm up for having the conversation. I have had the conversation with various funders around the world. Other countries don't do it that way. The evidence that your project is working is, did they come back? Yeah. And they brought 3 friends who've all got the same challenge. Great. So it's working. It's having an impact. What more evidence do we need? Young people are changing. We're alleviating the problem. They've signed up for our next project. They're now engaged in some sort of positivity. They're learning something. They're having fun. They're developing their creative talents. But to me, that's a measure of success.
Yeah.
Not a 27% increase in that.
Right, that's it. You need someone, a real person, to look through the impact of it, rather than put it all into a spreadsheet and see what the total comes out as. And
I mean, if somebody said to me, how happy do you feel today on a scale of 1 to 10? I kind of go, what?
Right.
I'll say 5 because that's a safe answer. I don't know what it means.
No, that's right.
And I know, if you ask me tomorrow, you'll get a different answer. So we're taking a sort of a snapshot and assuming it's the truth. And it's not the truth.
Yeah.
We had one question we got asked. There's a thing called the Warwick-Edinburgh scale, wellness scale, developed by those 2 universities, Warwick and Edinburgh. It's a validated scale. It's been used for years. It's pretty decent. But some of the questions are open to interpretation. One of them is something like, let me try and get this right. How safe do you feel on your journey to and from school, college, or work? 1 is very safe, 10 is very unsafe. So 1's the ideal answer. And I remember having this conversation with a funder. They said, lots of your young people said 1, and that's lovely. Isn't that wonderful? And I said, well, there's nowhere on the form to record the supplementary question that I always ask is, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
So we had a young man say, I feel very safe. I've got a gun.
Right. Wow.
Another boy said, I'm really safe because everybody knows my brother. If anybody touches me, they will die.
Yeah.
That's not a good answer. But on paper, that looks like the perfect answer.
Yeah. It's exactly the same that we see with reporting for sort of Arts Council audience reports. So did you feel welcomed? Yes. But then there's why you can't move forward with it as to provide any more information to take that into your next project.
Yeah. Often it's tick box.
It is tick box.
And for me, people deserve more than that.
Yeah, that's right. Conversation goes a long way.
Yeah.
So you're working not only in East London,
No.
but let's say in East London.
Based in East London and with a global footprint.
Right.
I mean, I've had this huge, through the Commonwealth and we did lots of Erasmus work before in Europe. We've had the privilege and the honour, really, of working with young people all over the place.
But how you see East London compared to all over the place? Because I know the answer to this because we've had this conversation. But I'll let you answer. Let it in your own.
I mean, I think I've lived in East London since I moved to England in my early teens. And I love it. I live in Walthamstow. I maintain London is the most diverse city on the planet. I love London for that reason. And if London is that, I think East London is probably the most diverse bit of London, therefore the most diverse bit of the planet. And what a beautiful, rich melting pot to be able to experience life through. I can leave my house in Walthamstow and I can hear languages from all over the world. I can buy food from all over the world. My kids have got friends who've got ancestral ties to all over the world. I am from all over the world. You know, my own background. I was born in Zambia. My dad's Scottish and Irish. My mum is Eastern European, probably 6 different nationalities within her. I've got Chinese relatives. I've got African American relatives, Jamaican relatives. There's some First Nation people married into my family. I've had this blessing, really, of being brought up in that mixture, which I think has enhanced my work. I don't ever feel, you know, I could be doing some work with kids in Zambia or Uganda or India. I feel at home. I feel at home with others. And I think that is, yeah, the whole Ubuntu thing that I talk about often, that community thing. We need each other. I am because we are, and because we are, I am, is the rough translation of that.
Right.
You know, we're nothing without each other.
Yeah.
And the more that we can, you know, I'm interested in difference. I love difference. I recognize lots of people find it difficult initially. Lots of people are, you know, they stick to their own kind or their own faith or their own culture. I think lots of people sometimes muddle up a national identity with their sort of cultural or faith-based or even familial identity. People will say, but everybody in my culture does this, whatever that this is. But it's not everybody in their culture. It's everybody that they know.
Right.
You know, in their map of the world, they see that as being a fact. It's not a fact. I've had, you know, Irish families go, well, we punish our kids physically because we're Irish. I go, well, you don't think that English people do that, or I don't know, Ghanaian people do that? I'm not blaming anybody, but it's not cultural. So growing up, since being, you know, moving to London as early teens, it's been it's like jumping in with both feet into the world. Everything is in East London. It feels to me that I almost like the centre of London has now moved east.
Right. There's a lot of new
Olympic
development
Park
which has moved a
and
lot.
East
So
Bank,
that's right.
Shoreditch and Dalston and Walthamstow now. Soho Theatre's just opened in Walthamstow. My son's working there. It's amazing. It's a hub of creativity. And because of all these global influences, it's a real bubbling hub. Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Yeah.
Amazing. And the project, It Takes a Village.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that quickly. Can you explain that?
Am I allowed to cry during this
Right.
podcast? Yeah, I mean, everybody seems to have heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child, which is an African proverb. Various nations claim it. It's more than a nation. Some of those nations don't really exist in my head. There were lines drawn on a map. And yes, the whole saying is the thing that really, really interests me. It takes a village to raise a child. And if that child is not initiated fully into the heart of that village, they may burn it down just to feel a little warmth.
Wow.
That's the whole saying.
I didn't know the whole saying.
So with that in mind, we decided at Catalyst in Communities to go back to my village. I went back to my Zambian village for the first time. I left in the early 70s. My colleague who was working with us then, he's no longer with us, went back to his village in the Punjab, where I've also been. I went there with him and his family. And there's this thing about, you know, the village life. And it is based on this principle of Ubuntu, this connectivity that we need as humans. In the village, in that mentality, and I view it not as a physical village. You can live as the village in East London or, you know, in Glasgow, or you can bring that mentality with you. If somebody behaves in a way that you don't appreciate or behaves in a way that brings them to the attention of the authorities, what tends to happen in the opposite of the village, the urban way, is we take them out of that society and we take them as far away as possible and we put them with other people who have done similar things and kind of just hope they get better. You know, the stated aim of the prison system is to rehabilitate. The statistics show that it doesn't work for the vast majority of people. The village mentality is you bring somebody into the heart of the village. You put them in the middle of the circle and you embrace them. You ask them, you know, why did you do that? What was going through your mind? Are you going to put it back? Are you going to fix it? What can I do to help you? What can we do to make sure you don't do this again? Is it okay if we do this to you? So that people get the learning. That, I think, is almost what human society always used to be. A lot of our work is done in circles. Always has been. We've done restorative justice projects in the past, quite big ones. that follows some of those kind of tribal traditions. Right back to caveman days, we would have sat in a circle, usually around the campfire, at the end of the day and had a conversation. And if somebody, I don't know, let's say me and you were out hunter gathering, and while we were out, somebody raided your cave and took your arrowheads or whatever, you wouldn't send them to the next village and hope, or into isolation and hope they got better. You'd bring them around the fire and go, look, we know you took his arrowheads. What did you do with them? Like, can you give them back? You're part of this tribe. That communal thing is what's missing from many, many, many societies, I think. Not everywhere. Lots of people do still have that in their life. When we bring people to the circle for the first time, it generally feels a bit weird at the beginning. And then there's almost like a DNA memory that people feel this. It's powerful. Sitting in that space, rather than having me or somebody who's seen to be the position of authority talking at people. Even a classroom is usually the teacher at the front and then rows. When you put a circle together, you still could have the teacher facilitating the conversation, but they're part of it. There's no top of a circle. There's no head of a circle. It's equal. You can see everybody. There's no hiding in a circle. And it's a rich and inclusive way of exploring something. So the conversations are enhanced by the circle process. The It Takes a Village it's a documentary film. It's on our website. Young people were involved in devising that, editing that, writing the storyboard. We couldn't take them to Africa and take them to India with us, but there was a team from East London who represented some of those nations, part of umius.tv. And going back to my village really kind of reassured me that I'm on the right path. It felt like home. I went back to the school that my parents taught at in the 60s. And, half of the school were wearing T-shirts with me as a baby on the T-shirt.
Really?
Welcome home. We've missed you. We love you. I was on my knees. And we had this day of music and drumming and dancing and football and eating together, and just a joyous joy. It was my birthday as well. I went there on my birthday, my 56th birthday, in honor of the 56 Commonwealth nations. That's why we did it. I met the youth ambassador, youth minister from Zambia at Marlborough House at a conference. And he said, you got to come for your 56th. There's 56 nations. And it was just a beautiful thing. Being at the school where my parents taught, I met people that my parents taught.
Wow.
I met a lady who went to my birth party when I was born. She took me back to my house. And I met the people that live in my house. And the family came out and they said, this is still your house. Come in. I went into that house and then had this beautiful, I sat on the doorstep with their 3-year-old son playing with the toy car, and had this, I don't know what you call it. It was deja vu, but it was real. That's the step I sat on with my cars when I was 3. And even now, my hairs are standing up, and you can hear it in my voice probably. It was deeply, deeply emotional. And I learned so much from being back in that village. And hopefully you can see it in the film. You can feel it coming across in the film. It's inclusive. It's generative. It's healthy. It's just what's missing from much of urban life. That feeling of belonging. I think lots of people in cities don't have that feeling of belonging anymore. And as humans, if we don't feel that we're part of something, if we don't feel we have a shared aim, a shared goal, that camaraderie that comes from being part of something, it protects us from some of these other problems. And sadly, in the urban setting, what the gangs do is they can provide that on a plate. They give you that shared identity. They give you a sense of belonging. They give you perceived protection. They give you some goals and some aims and often an income, which is a deep human need to have that in your life. So for some people who don't get it elsewhere, when that's offered to them on a plate, they lap it up. And it's really sad to say, but sometimes it's almost like thank God for the gangs.
Wow.
Because
That's
otherwise,
to say, isn't it?
These people don't have any sense of belonging sometimes. It's often said that, it's the environment that creates these problems. I kind of don't believe that. I think it's a human thing. It's a need that's fulfilled through that. People have said things to me like, if you grew up where I grew up, you'd be in this gang. It's easy to believe that. It's kind of that you're a product of your environment is a kind of government phrase. We get people to question that. You know, I remember asking a young man who was part of a different project we did, that East Side Story project that we did. We did a stage show. He said that if you'd lived where I lived, you'd be the same as me. And I said, but I've been to your flat. I met your mum and your cousin. Do you remember? They live in the same flat. They're not carrying weapons and selling the stuff that you sell. So it can't be the environment. There's something else going on here. It's your choices. It's maybe the environment's part of the equation. But I think bringing people together, bringing that village, that inclusive mentality, the whole Ubuntu process shifts something for people. It's been described as me that people have said this is what's been missing for me. This feeling that I'm mutually respected. I'm on the same level. We're not on a deficit. It's not like the professionals here and the young person's here. We're starting from a mutual understanding. We're together in this. That is a beautiful thing to be able to participate in. And you know, I'm honoured to be able to do it.
Disconnected Bodies are a social enterprise working to improve access to art, culture and heritage. We support innovative projects and guide innovative people to choose, create or take part in brilliant art experiences. Our commitment to widening cultural access and democratising the arts has seen us become innovators within the industry. Visit disconnectedbodies.co or find us on social media.